Good morning and welcome to What You Gotta Say. To all our friends on Facebook, YouTube, and Roku, this should be a very interesting show. We're going to be talking to two former mayors of some predominantly black cities. I've got with me Reverend Dr. W. Wilson Goode, former mayor of Philadelphia, and the mayor of Vermont and New York State, Mayor Richard Thomas. Now, we're going to talk about what's going on with politics from some people who are still political insiders, and we're also going to talk about what we can do to make some changes. And we're going to do that right after this break.
You opened a small business. That's a great way to have generational wealth. If you're a minority business, you may be struggling to keep your head above water. Why? In 2019, the black community spent $1.5 trillion because the black dollar lifespan, 28 days Asian communities, 19 days Jewish communities, 6 hours a month in the black communities. Major brands target the black media, TV, and radio. That's why blacks are brand shoppers. That's why they get a big slice of that $1 trillion pie. Your business needs exposure. You got quotes from cable networks and local radio. They charge a lot of money for a little exposure. Networking and social media is a full-time job to get part-time money. Let's look at a successful black business model. Remember Soul Train? It was a new black TV show that Johnson Cosmetics increased the exposure of Afro Sheen and made billions of dollars for Bobby Johnson. Where are you going to find a good show for a low price? We have a talk show called What You Got to Say. What You Got to Say is a black-owned talk show streaming live on YouTube channels, Facebook Live. What You Got to Say has a diverse audience from 18 to 62 years old, and their gross income range from $32,000 to $122,000 a year. That exposure will get you a good slice of the $1.5 trillion. Tell us about your business. May be able to get on our black-owned spotlight. In 4 weeks, your business can go from surviving to thriving. To find out how you can get what's yours, email sales@squiresignage.com. They're waiting to hear what you got to say. You opened a small business. That's a great way to have generational wealth. If you're a minority business, you may be struggling to keep your head above water. Why? In 2019, the black community spent $1.5 trillion because the black dollar lifespan, 28 days Asian communities, 19 days Jewish communities, 6 hours a month in the black communities. Major brands target the black media, TV, and radio. That's why blacks are brand shoppers. That's why they get a big slice of that $1 trillion pie. Your business needs exposure. You got quotes from cable networks and local radio. They charge a lot of money for a little exposure. Networking and social media is a full-time job to get part-time money. Let's look at a successful black business model. Remember Soul Train? It was a new black TV show that Johnson Cosmetics increased the exposure of Afro Sheen and made billions of dollars for Bobby Johnson. Where are you going to find a good show for a low price? We have a talk show called What You Got to Say. What You Got to Say is a black-owned talk show streaming live on YouTube channels, Facebook Live. What You Got to Say has a diverse audience from 18 to 62 years old, and their gross income range from $32,000 to $122,000 a year. That exposure will get you a good slice of the $1.5 trillion. Tell us about your business. May be able to get on our black-owned spotlight. In 4 weeks, your business can go from surviving to thriving. To find out how you can get what's yours, email sales@squiresignage.com. They're waiting to hear what you got to say. You opened a small business. That's a great way to have.
Okay, nationally, the President Obama sat there a couple of days ago from Philadelphia, which you see this lovely background here, and he opened up his bully pulpit. Now, with that smackdown that he did has set a lot of things into motion. But most important, I like to introduce the man who is solely responsible for this beautiful skyline in Philadelphia. Former mayor of Philadelphia, Reverend Dr. Wilson Goode. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
It is good to see you.
It's good to be seen, always.
Oh, man, look, when I grow up, I want to dress dapper like you.
Oh, you're not bad yourself.
Oh, that's because my wife dressed me. Now, also, friend to the show, he has coined and actually been the first black man who ran into police problems while banking. In fact, he was banking to get the information that was going on in his city. He's a friend to the show. He's been here a lot of times. Former mayor of Vermont, Richard Thomas. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Thanks for having us on and looking forward to sharing what I got to say.
Hey, listen, we are always looking forward to that knowledge. You both seem to have this wonderful ability to motivate my viewers. So let's get into it. The Republicans are going crazy, and the Democrats are at a stall. Yesterday, in front of the White House, black women, civil rights activists, went before the Capitol and started making some good trouble, to the point of getting arrested. Now, in fact, they got arrested with the president of the Black Congressional Caucus. So, do we need to do this to keep the pressure on them?
Absolutely. I think that we are back to the 60s again. I think that the attitude of some members of the Republican Party, those who supported Donald Trump, is trying to turn the clock back to the 1950s and 1960s. And we have to do what we have to do in order to reverse that. And I believe that demonstration and pushing Congress to do what Congress needs to do is the right way to do it, and the only way that we're going to reverse this. The only way we can reverse it, in addition to, we have to get black folks out to vote every election from this point on in large numbers, because unless we get the people out of their houses in the voting booth, it's not going to happen. All that we do is demonstrations are good. We ought to do those to call attention, to motivate people, to mobilize people, but it's going to take people recognizing that they have to leave their homes, go to a voting booth and vote. And because that's the way it may have to happen in the future, because based upon the laws being passed across the country, it becomes necessary not to depend on mail-in ballots, not to depend on drop-off ballots, but that standing in line, long lines, in order to cast your ballot people will stand in long lines to go to a football game or a baseball game or go to a concert. They need to stand in long lines in order to vote on election day, because that's what's going to turn this around.
Mayor Thomas, what are we up against? Now, I've been following your township on Instagram, Facebook. I've been following you. Now, there is some stuff that has been going on that you've been trying to prevent. And I mean, right now we're looking at. In fact, I saw a Instagram post by one of your state senators on what was going on. Bree, tell them what's happening right now in Vermont.
So this is where the Biden, bill on infrastructure that the Democrats pushed through become very important. We have issues in all communities, especially Black and brown communities, where the infrastructure has been neglected. And between sewers being broken to sanitation trucks not rolling, you have a situation where communities are at risk of having major health issues because the sewers are broken and the sanitation trucks cannot pick up the trash. Some of this is self-inflicted, but when it comes to the national level, there is an opportunity to help cure some historical ills. And it's all a matter of just focusing on doing the business, doing the work. And that's where I think you're going to have this conflict between the Democrats and Republicans, because communities have not been served. And this is where the fight has to be taken right to Washington to make sure that they do their job, pass the bill, and deliver the money so we can fix broken infrastructure.
Well, fix broken infrastructure, and let me take a conservative stance to this. Your town,
Mount Vernon, tell me about it.
they do that, right? Now, from what I've been seeing, there has been, now you guys have a three-prong or three-legged table in terms of your
government.
In terms of your government. Now, the mayor is one leg, in which you were.
Yep.
You have the controller.
Yes.
And then you have the, what is that? The
city council.
The city council.
The third structure.
Yes. Now, your financing, paying the bills, is the sole responsibility of the controller, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, the money in the account is also under the controller's umbrella.
That's not entirely correct, but it's in their wheelhouse. It's
okay.
The mayor.
Now, you were trying to figure out with the bank, because the money that you're supposed to be receiving wasn't quite accurate. The books weren't balancing.
The books were not balancing, but also we had some bizarre things going on where we know we collected as a city millions of property tax dollars, but the money was missing. Monies were missing from the education fund for our children, and monies were missing from paying our vendors that provide us with basic items like fuel so that garbage trucks can operate and police cars can respond to emergencies. So there are some very basic items that people take for granted because it's so, you just take it, you assume that it's there. But in the case of Mount Vernon, the issue remains a major mystery that the finances of the city are shrouded in secrecy, and no one seems to want to fix the problem except for people like myself, like you and your viewers, Mayor Good, and the good people that want good people to be good.
Shrouded in secret. We're talking about public dollars, right?
Dollars.
And there is no full disclosure, no transparency on my tax dollars in your town.
There's zero visibility of what's going on with Mount Vernon's finances, and it's hard to believe, but that is the situation. I mean, it's no longer a conspiracy, it's the reality. And when you look at a city, one of the largest cities in the state of New York, has over $110 million budget. You can't see anything. The bank won't respect the mayor's authority, won't let the city council see. It only works with the controller and a secret group that controls the controller. And when you start poking into, the issues of how come we don't have monies to pay the gas bill, or how come our children were shortchanged millions of dollars that they needed for technology, especially during COVID, you have to ask yourself, where is this money going? And the bank has played a role in blocking everybody. And when I went there to try and, push the issue and force the contract that the city has with the bank, they called the cops on me because they felt that I was getting too close to the truth.
Dr. Good, you had some level of draining the swamp when you took over as mayor of Philadelphia.
Absolutely. Most cities are not accustomed to strong mayors, and we have a strong mayor form of government. And there were mayors prior to me back in the 70s that basically operated pretty much in secret, as was indicated by Mayor Thomas. And we had to go in there and restructure the finances without raising taxes, and was able to get increases for the school district and get increases for programs. Plus, the thing that I did was I appointed more Blacks to position in the government than all the mayors before me combined, and since me combined. I want to say that more Blacks in a high level of government than all the mayors before me and since me combined. And through that, we were able to do two things. We're able to take control of the government, to send money where it needs to go, and also to have people accountable to me in terms of getting things done that needed to get done. And that's very, very important. Who is mayor in a strong mayor form of government is important, but you have to be surrounded by people who are going to do what you want done and follow your instructions. And when that happens, you can have some big things happen in the city.
All right. Well, I'm sitting up here with two great guys, and we're talking about your government, local, nationally. We're talking about getting involved and fighting the good fight, getting into some good trouble, because right now we need some good trouble to make some changes. I'm Vincent Squire with former Mayor Reverend Dr. Wilson Goode and former Mayor Richard Thomas of Mount Vernon. And we'll be back right after this break.
Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, v'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillah.
Our often repeated prayers,
Although we may be different,
Yet similar.
as we reach out to our Creator,
we offer all praise.
And we seek forgiveness.
we ask for peace in our hearts, in our minds, and in our spirits. Amen.
Welcome back, everyone, to What You Gotta Say. Now, if you missed the first segment of it, I'm with Reverend Dr. Wilson Goode, former mayor of Philadelphia, and former mayor of Mount Vernon, Richard Thomas. Now, we were talking about being able to, well, when you guys got into office, you had to clean the swamp. So your predecessors have been involved in a systematic way of funneling money where it didn't go to where it's supposed to, which strikes me as crazy, because if you're going to steal money, you shouldn't steal it from a fund that is extremely necessary for the operation of your city. Trash in school.
You know, corruption is greed. And when you get too greedy, that's what happens. You get people that do not have any care for the people. They care only for themselves. And the greed is so apparent that no one even wants to try and deal with the issue. The way that I believe that the forces at work are working, they want to just make the mess bigger and bigger, get everybody exhausted, and just let it collapse, and then claim that these Black and brown people could not handle the opportunity to run their own city. But that's not true. The truth is there are some very greedy people, people that are not Black and brown, that benefited to the tune of millions on the backs of people that are Black and brown. The bottom line is our tax dollars are green. That's the only color that should matter. And our community should be respected the same way the next community is. But the big banks don't care. They just want to, brush it under the rug and act as if nothing happened. But meanwhile, trash is not being collected in the city, and our kids are not being educated, and we're still paying the highest taxes around. And that's where, my hope is that my generation does not lose sight of what our previous generation did in the fight for civil rights, in the fight for equity. And we keep fighting the good fight because it's right. And if we don't fight and we don't stay strong, we're going to continue to have people dumping on us and disrespecting our families and our kids. And that's something that we cannot tolerate nor stand for.
Dr. Goode, your administration, your first year, was definitely getting into some good trouble.
Well, I think that my issue was a bit different than Mayor Thomas' issue, that I was not dealing with what you call corruption at the level that he is talking about. The basic problem that I had was reordering the priority of the spending of city dollars. And I can simply say that basically we had what I call a military budget, which I called the police and fire department, with a military budget that meant that things going to education and programs like the homeless and things like AIDS and things like illiteracy were not there to be found. And what I fundamentally did was I actually reduced the police department by 2,000 in my first couple of years in office, and gave money to homeless, money to AIDS, money to illiteracy, and set up programs that was able to have model programs for the country in those areas. Even today, we have the largest home city in the country in terms of funding for the homeless in the city. We have a program fighting illiteracy, especially since there were 40% of the population in Philadelphia could not read above the fourth grade level. 40% of the adults in the city could not read above the fourth grade level. And something had to be done. If you are not able to read above the fourth, came out in full force. But illiteracy was also a big problem. The whole issue of not being able to read at fourth grade level by the time you reach your fourth grade mean that the people you mentioned earlier, the people who build prisons, look at that statistics in cities and decide how many prisons they need to build in the future. So we needed to do something about that, and we did something about it and turned things around.
Well, let's look at it in Philadelphia. Huge. I mean, you millions. I mean, in the 80s, you millions in terms of tax dollars collected. Yet the money went to not the areas of people of color, but the money went into areas of Northeast Philadelphia, where and other parts where it was a predominantly white location. I mean, they had a regular trash pickup twice a week. They had street sweepers. The schools were pristine and looking extremely well. The fire, the fire department was always fully staffed, overstaffed, and in strategic locations where they could be at a
drop out by the time they reach the 8th grade, and then they will end up in prison system.
Yeah. Well, they were. It's not that they weren't educating people; they just weren't educating the black children well.
Absolutely, and to some extent, that problem still persists. I have to say that we did not solve the problem all the way. That problem still persists, and we've had black leadership at the school district, but it's the funding, and it's the funding from the city and also the funding from the state. The representative in the state from upstate do not want to fund the education system for the Philadelphia school district. And therefore, we end up not having enough money to begin to do the program that will enable these young people to catch up, because many of our young children who live in inner city of Philadelphia are not able to have parents who read to them, parents who are able to give them what they need by the time and prepare them to go to school. So they end up having to catch up once they get in school. And so we need resources to help young people on in the 1st and 2nd grade catch up with the other students in order to prevent them from dropping out by the time they reach the 8th grade.
Mayor Thomas, did you have problems with the state assisting and helping in New York?
You know, I just want to say, many thanks to Mayor Good for the fight he put on, because and I just want to bring it all together and bring it forward. When he focused on making sure young people could learn and get access to education and get access to, resources to try and make their playing field level, people, my age group, right, benefited because we got push. And this is what they do not want. The forces do not want smart people in positions of power, because, you're going to make smarter decisions. So when I went to appeal for state intervention and state help, they applied DARVO. They tried to discredit me. They attacked me. They reversed the role between victim and offender. And the city has been terrorized ever since. The moment you start asking smart questions like, why is our trash bill so high? We don't put out that much trash. How come, the contracts to fix the streets only goes to one company? Or how come, when it comes to building buildings or homes in our community, only a select group of people can do it?
Right.
And when you look at the government and you see it's people that look like you, but on the inside, they're hardwired to work against you. The problem that we face is that, we've been, I want to say, co-opted by forces of money and power. And that's where we have to have more people like Mayor Good, yourself, Honorable Squire, people like me that really just want to get the greater good done. And we, have to sacrifice to get that accomplished. But the state seems to block real progress when you start asking the smart questions.
Whoa,
So we need media outlets like yours to kind of shine some light on it to point out that, the hate is real, but the love is fake.
Mayor Thomas, hold on. I saw on Instagram the state senator.
Oh, yeah. State Senator Biaggi, very thankful for her Instagram post 3 years later.
And she kicked the back out of Governor Cuomo.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for her advocacy now. And this is where it's hard. And Malcolm X said it best. When you see two people arguing, you can't tell which one is the fool. So I have to give much respect to Senator Biaggi because she tried to work with my administration 3 years ago to try and address the issues that you see now. But she's watched this issue for 3 years, fester. And she finally brought the fight to the governor. But I'm urging her to bring the fight to the Attorney General of New York. Bring the fight to the state comptroller of New York. They have the power to do stuff. That's where we're seeing the state slink back, shrug their shoulders and say, there's nothing we can do. But that's not true. The state attorney general and the state controller can help fix the situation, but they won't. And that's a different story and a different topic. But much props and much thanks to the senator who represents part of Mount Vernon, Senator Biaggi, but also Senator Jamal Bailey, who is on the mat right now trying to figure out why the state is not responding to the cries for help for many years.
Well, Dr. Good, now you took on the power brokers. I mean, well, as Mayor Thomas said, now there are people with black faces who are these puppets for the power brokers. And in the Willie Lynch letters, that's called Negro whisperers. But in Philadelphia, predominantly black, when you came into office, had those black people who were handpicked by the power brokers, correct?
Well, I want to say something, and I wrote a book recently called Black Voters Matter, a Philadelphia story, and I want to indicate that I started this journey that I was on in 1968, and in 1968 there was not a black elected official in the city that was not handpicked by the white Democratic Party structure. Not a black elected official in the city that was not handpicked. And in 1978, we ran the late state Senator Hardy Williams for state representative and was able to defeat the party structure. And from that point, we went on and elected Congress people. We elected, and in 1983, I was elected mayor because we basically demonstrated the power of the black vote. And that is, you have to get the voters from their homes into the voting booth in order to vote. And if you do that, and you can defeat the power structure, because we demonstrated there are more people who wanted to change and there were who were not, but those who wanted to change were not coming out to vote. So the whole concept is that if you want change, leave your house, go out and vote. No matter what obstacles they put in your way, if you leave your house and go to a voting booth somewhere on election day, you can defeat what they're trying to do. And I think that's very, very important, especially at this time when there's so much effort around the country in trying to reverse everything that has happened over the last 20 years or so. And I grew up in the rural South. My mother and father could not vote at all until they were 50 years of age and moved to Philadelphia in 1954. Could not vote, were not permitted to vote. That every election day, no matter where I am, I'm going to vote. I'm going to come back home, go and stand in line and vote, because I'm going to pay tribute to that. For 25 years of their lives, when they were eligible to vote, they could not vote.
Okay, so the power of the black vote. Now, Mayor Thomas also went through the same thing. He had to grassroots, gather a group of people, a new group of constituents to defeat the power brokers. So now we're looking at national
ballot box and make no excuses. I mean, look, Stacey Abrams did the right thing by making it a very hands-on, everybody account for each other. One vote, you make sure you bring one vote. You got to communicate with people and make sure they understand the stakes. And that's what happened in Georgia. But the response can't be, well, only Georgia can do it. That's not true. We have to replicate that effort in the places where they're trying to change the rules and make sure we just beat them at their own game.
Absolutely. I can tell you that that in 1983, when I ran against Frank Rizzo, no one gave me a chance of beating Frank Rizzo. And I said, I can beat Frank Rizzo. And people kind of laugh at me. Mm-hmm. And I said, I can beat Frank Rizzo because I know how he wins.
Come on.
I say he wins because there's a disproportionate number of white voters voting than there are black voters voting. And what I have to do is focus on equal voter turnout. Mm-hmm. I can get equal voter turnout from my base of support to his base of support. There's no way he can ever win because there are more people in my base of support than there are in his. And I was able to beat him by like 58,000 votes in 1983, and then in 1987 come back and beat him by 30,000 when he ran as Republican and thought that he could pull the Republican vote over and win. And it all comes to getting your base of support out to vote. And Stacey Abrams is absolutely right. You have to get the base of support out to vote. If you don't do that, you're not going to win. You're not going to win because if there is a higher percentage of white voters coming out in these precincts, in these cities and towns and townships around the country, than there are the black percentage of voters, then you likely will not be able to win and turn this thing around. The way to turn it around is take their own rules and beat them with their own rules. And that is, if they're taking away the mail-in and all of that, then say, I'm going to stand in line if I need to all night long. And be there on when the polls open in the morning. When the polls open in the morning and to vote, I'm going to stand in line as long as I need to. When I ran for mayor, people were standing in line until midnight.
Yes. In fact,
and from my point of view, we have to get that kind of inspiration going all across the country, as if our lives depended on it, and it does.
When you ran against Rizzo, I went to my voting precinct, registered voter, had my voter registration card that I've had since, 17 and a half, the eligible time to actually get a card. Stood in line up until 10:30. I was rejected. I had to go to the police precinct where they had the judge there and the district attorney who looked at my card, looked at my ID, and said, I don't see anything wrong with this. What's going on with that precinct? That I believe that precinct, the judge had to give me a letter to take to the precinct so I could vote. And even in doing that, the precinct captain was instructing me on who to vote for. So
I understand clearly what you're saying. In 1987, when I ran against Frank Rizzo when he was a Republican, he refused to concede and said, I want all the voting machines open up? And I said, happily. Happily, I will open them up. And I said that, and I guarantee you this, that every machine they open, I'm going to increase my votes.
Yes.
And every machine that they open, increase my votes. And so after about 1,000 machines, he gave up because I said, we don't cheat, they cheat.
Mayor Thomas, what? Okay, now we've got this thing with fair fighting, Stacey Abrams, and that movement, but we've got Black Lives Matter. We've got, we've still got some civil rights warriors, a group of women above the age of 50, might I add, who are willing to give them good trouble. What can we do to get our young people involved?
We got to give them something to do. We have to create the opportunities and use the monies that we have to actually benefit them. And just the other day, following months of outrage and outreach, seeking an investment in our young people, New York State finally put up $140 million toward youth programs and jobs. And that's it's great to have the resource. But, I think the people were rightfully frustrated that billions of dollars were being spent on COVID, money for masks and PPE and sanitizer, but no money was being set aside to address mental health issues or programs that actually help people, our young people. So what needs to happen is exactly what happened the other day. 140 million was allocated. We really need more than that, but this is a great start to start, sending the message that we have to compete for the attention of our young people. We just can't rely on Facebook and Xbox or PlayStation to play the role of parent. That's a terrible recipe for disaster. So the more we create opportunities to engage our young people, sports, through hands-on activities with actual people. If you want to wear a mask because of COVID, fine. But the reality is we need to have real interaction, and we have to make up for that year where everybody was on lockdown. We had to do some real restructuring following COVID's impact of closing us all down.
Now, Dr. Good, your administration increased the inner city youth funding with play streets during the summer, the intramural sports during the summer, also the youth job corps.
And youth employment. 1 year, I think 1987, we employed every young person in the city that wanted a job. Mm-hmm. And I said that because we said, anyone that wants a job, we got a job for you. And everybody, they came. And the interesting thing about that is crime in the city that summer among young people dropped by 70%, almost non-existent. So we have